All right, and welcome back yet again to the Paisan Sports podcast, presented by Elevation 5280 Sports. Dante DePlasto, joined as always by Zach Deal of What's the Deal Sports. So I gotta ask, what's the deal with your fantasy team? Yet again, another week, another horrible
You're a rat. I
performance.
literally told you
Only
I'm hanging up the
six.
phone. So you want me to hang up the phone right now? You better switch it.
Only 69 points.
You're
Nice.
a rat. Change the subject right now. Show that you've been watching sports because I told you what the circumstance was if you brought that up again.
I couldn't help it. Well, you know what? Although I am very excited coming off a big win, I will say, what's the deal with the Phillies bullpen? Because ironically, going into the postseason, I said one of the things I was actually very confident about was the bullpen, and through two games, it's been horrendous to say the least.
Well, the funny part is, all right, so game one, I'm down in Atlantic City with a bunch of people, like a group of 30 people. So that was on Saturday. And I'm talking to some people from up north that bet on the Phillies with us, a squad ride, and they don't really know too much about the Phillies roster, especially the bullpen. You know, the bullpen gets lost in the woodworks, even if you know about another team's team. The bullpen's usually where it's hard to keep track of other teams. But people are asking me, and we're throwing all these different pitchers out there in game one, and they see Matt Strom on the mound. They're like, "Oh, like what's up with Matt Strom?" I'm like, "Yeah, he made the All-Star team this year, but I don't know how much I can trust him." And then he gets teed up, and I don't know if it was either Strom went in first and then Hoffman, or vice versa. I forget.
It
But
was
and then
Hoffman first. It was
yeah, and then
no.
the
It might.
person asked me, yeah,
Yeah, it
they
was
asked me who's
Hoffman
coming out, and it
first.
was Strom with the long hair. And then they asked me also, like when Hoffman was on the mound, like who's this dude? And I was like, yeah, he made the All-Star team this year, but he was also the bullpen catcher for Bryce Harper, and Bryce Harper gave the coaching staff the go-ahead to try and bring him up to the roster. So, I mean, I just don't really know where your confidence lied when you were going into this series, and you're really confident in the
Well,
bullpen, because
the
that's where I
bullpen.
was like
I
the
mean, the
least
bullpen
confident
was
in.
pretty damn good all year. The guys I
Yeah, but
highlighted
they were
specifically.
they had huge leads in the beginning of the season, which they obviously didn't have to do too much with the bullpen in those scenarios. But it kind of showed you around
True.
the trade deadline that they made all these different moves, and they let go of half their bullpen that went to Baltimore, and they were really trying to figure things out. So I just had that etched in the back of my mind about just being
Yeah, but
nervous
the
about.
guy they brought in, Carlos Estevez, I mean, he's been great ever since coming here. So that's the thing. It's like, yeah, they switched up the bullpen a bit, but the guy they brought in has been pitching pretty well. The other guy was Tanner Banks, who we rarely see. I'm wondering where Jose Alvarado is right now. Maybe I missed something in an injury report, but we haven't seen him so far, and they've used every
Well,
other
that's also what I
reliever.
was nervous about too, because the pivot from you had lockdown guys last year. I know Craig Kimbrell obviously blew the game last season, and Jose Alvarado was your guy, and Sir Anthony was your guy. But that was also another reason why I was a little bit cautious about trying to put the expectations too high on this bullpen, because this is the first year that this collective unit, especially since the trade deadline, like we mentioned, this is the first time that they're all trying to gel together. That happened relatively quickly. So, but the one thing that's a bonus is that, I mean, the Mets bullpen is even more of a problem.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, in this past game, definitely, and then also, in some previous games when you date back to the doubleheader. So yeah, that's a positive. And speaking of positives, let's move away from the bullpen for now. Let's talk positives, because after an awful first game where they put up a run in the first inning and did nothing the rest of the game, blew it in the eighth, and after the first, what was it, five, 6 innings of yesterday's game, I mean, things were looking grim. The offense looked lifeless, and then a home run by Harper just really lit a spark for this offense. And I was at the game. It was absolutely phenomenal. one of the best games I've ever been to, one of the loudest games I've ever been to. The noise at one point was deafening. What a phenomenal game, and what a way
Well, I
to
was watching on the
avoid
broadcast,
falling
not to cut you off,
0-2.
but like on the broadcast, they kind of like purposely just the announcers didn't talk after the one home run and just let the crowd just go. And it sounded like they honestly blew the speakers out because that's how loud it was. And I was just thinking in my mind, I actually thought about you and I was like, oh, Dante's at the game. He's probably having the time of his life. But also after they hit the 2 home runs and then they lose the lead, I'm just thinking to myself, like, how are they going to waste this opportunity in this moment? They already wasted game one with Zach Wheeler Zach Wheeler's the first pitcher in MLB history to have 2 7-inning performances with only 1 hit in playoff history. And they wasted game one. It was just absolutely
Wow.
gross, just the way that game one ended, just based off that
Yeah.
pitching performance. And you turn it over to the bullpen, and then it looked like the bats just couldn't get going until a certain point yesterday too. And then they started getting timely hits. And I was happy that they didn't have to rely on the home run after they got the game tied, because I think that's a dangerous game to play if you're not able to just
Yeah.
get guys on base and just push runners around the bases.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is the Mets relied solely on the long ball in yesterday's game. That's where they got all of the runs, was off the home runs. The Phillies showed they could do both. Granted, the Mets were able to get all those runs really without the long ball in game one. I can't remember if they had a home run or not, but I do remember a good bit of the runs coming without a home run. But if we're talking yesterday, I mean, the Phillies were really able to do both. The Mets kind of were just relying solely on that. And when you have to rely on either a pitcher making a mistake with one pitch or you anticipating what pitch is coming, which is the likelihood for a lot of home runs, then that kind of limits your offense, right?
Yeah. But the one thing I
So
was happy about was our 2 biggest bats in Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper. They've been showing really good patience at the plate where they're not trying to do too much and they will take a walk in a situation to set other guys
yeah,
up. And the way that Nick Castellanos is playing in the 4 hole right now, batting cleanup, I mean, I feel like Bryce is very confident that he can turn it over to him and just get on base and be able to make things happen. That was also with Trey Turner being able to get on base before the Bryce Harper home run that spurred the comeback, is just try and get guys on base and just make things happen. Johan Rojas actually got on base too, which was pretty huge. And I think it was
yeah.
interesting.
I didn't understand the move to pinch hit for him. Maybe a little bit when they brought in Cody Clemens. They wanted the lefty and righty matchup, but Rojas, he had a hit already in the game. He's phenomenal defensively, so I didn't fully understand it. But what I understood even less was the move to put in Austin Hayes for Cody Clemens. Cody Clemens, although it didn't result in a walk or a hit, had one hell of an at bat at one point where he fouled off a ton of pitches. The whole crowd, we were all chanting. I think it was "Let's Go Cody," if I remember right. Or no, we were just chanting "Cody, Cody." And then you bring him in for a righty when the Mets were using a righty, so it didn't really make any sense to take out a lefty to have a righty face a righty, especially when Cody already had a pretty good at bat. And it's not like Austin Hayes is like an upgrade defensively. And then if you're looking for more defense, that's why you had Johan Rojas in the game. So that move just made no sense to me. I thought Topper, I mean, starting from pulling Bohm from the lineup, was doing a bit of over managing the game. But hey, we pulled it off and we won, so I'm not really complaining.
Honestly, thinking about it now, like pregame, I was a little upset with that move. I'm a big Edmundo Sosa guy, but I just was kind of questionable in that you're all-star from the season. You need all hands on deck. But it actually ended up working out because then obviously his first at bat, when he came up to pinch hit, he hit, what was it, 1 pitch and a pop-up, which I was
Yeah,
very upset about. Like, I mean, you got to have a better eye than that. I think he was a little
yeah,
bit anxious for being on the bench. But if you think about it, Alec Bohm batting that deep into the lineup actually worked out for the Phillies because it gives you a little bit of pop at the end of the lineup. So I don't know if they're going to experiment with doing stuff like that. I think everybody knows that no one really expected Alec Bohm to get platoon, but it would happen in the outfield and with Bryson Stott. But after Bryson Stott hit that iconically clutch hit, that triple yesterday, I don't know if you can take him out of the lineup. So I still think they're going
Yeah,
to
no.
mix things around and do stuff like that. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. Also, Edmundo Sosa had that one throwing error that got the runner to second base, which was a little bit sketchy. You don't really, that was a little uncharacteristic from him. You don't really see that too often. So there's just maybe a little bit of angst and nerves going on there. But thinking back on it with the hindsight now, I actually think that moving the lineup around might do something, because I don't think it's going to work if you're going to try and have Castellanos and Bohm bat next to each other in the batting order, especially with two righties up, and then maybe Bryce in like the 6 hole, and then you go with Real Muto in the 7 hole. But the bats have been really dry outside of yesterday. Besides Bryson Stott in that spot, there's been like a big gap between the production in the lineup between like the 5 to like 9 hole. So I think it kind of worked out how having Alec Bohm come in and bat. I think he was in like the 7th hole when he came in. That's where Sosa was in the lineup.
No, Sosa was in the 8 hole, so that's where
8
Bohm
hole.
came
So
in
yeah,
at.
it's even deeper into the
Yeah.
lineup. So it gives you a little bit of juice at the back end of the lineup. And I think they really made that switch for Johan Rojas because they were trying to get somebody on base for Kyle Schwarber to come up and have a big hit, because
But
it's going
that's
to
the
be hard.
thing. Rojas was able to get on base with Schwarber up
I just don't feel like they were
previously,
that confident. And I think
and
he
and
also,
he was able to swipe second as well, and then he even got. I think it was either when Rojas was on base or when it was on Turner, or when it was Turner on second base. One of them basically got a free pass over to third.
yeah, that was Turner.
So
They weren't covering third at all.
yeah,
So
and that getting to third, with either Turner, Sosa, or whoever else you have that has some speed, getting over to third when you have somebody like Castellanos up at the plate facing a righty is huge,
yeah.
because then you can't just go low and away slider each pitch, because you run the risk of the ball getting by and run scoring. So having a runner on third while somebody like Castellanos is up or even Real Muto, any of the right-handed batters for the most part, it is really key.
Well, I think that's why Trey Turner is the X factor, because even if he's on second base, like, you're just worried about him in general just because of the speed that he
Yeah.
has. He's not going to go from second to home on a wild pitch, but just getting Trey Turner on base, you saw that he was able to steal 2 bases in one appearance, and when he's able to get on base, it helps out Bryce Harper, it helps out the rest of the team to be able to have a guy on that can score from pretty much wherever on the field. So that's always a huge plus. And I think Trey is batting pretty well right now. I mean, he's doing what he's asked of. We haven't really seen any errors in the fielding department, so that's always a plus. So I think the top of the order as of right now is doing their thing. It's just how hot can they get and carry on, and like there always has to be another guy to step up, and Bryson Stott was that guy yesterday.
Yeah, and speaking of the field, and then in the what was it in the 9th inning, at this point, that fly ball hit in Castellanos' direction, there was almost zero doubt in my mind he was about to come make a sliding grab on that play.
Dude, who do you
I
see
mean,
like makes it look so routinely and does it so often? It's the same catch every single time, like the
yeah,
backhanded
it's
slide. And he's so
literally,
used to it by now. And he has like
yeah,
what? He has like 4 or 5 of those in the playoffs specifically over the past 2 to
yeah.
3 seasons.
Yeah, I mean, he had 2 in 2022, one in the NLDS, one in the World Series. He had the one last night. He might have had another one last year as well. And it's to a point where it's like you expect him to make that play now, which is crazy to be at a point where we're expecting Castellanos to make a phenomenal grab in the
There's
outfield, but here we
most
are, and he's
outfielders
been
aren't
doing
even
it
trying to
routinely.
attempt that play either. Like most guys are going to let that bounce in front of them and just take it. It is what it is type scenario, and he just has full confidence to go up and make that play. So as long as he's making that play routinely, I mean, I'm happy with it. So I think it was a little crazy that the crowd was booing him with. I mean, Nick Castellanos just takes
It
like the
worked
brunt of
though.
blame. It works
Yeah,
though. That's what I'm
but
thinking
it
about now.
worked.
Like, is like it
And
works,
I
and
wasn't even one. I wasn't even one of the guys booing him. I didn't
I
even
was actually
boo
going to
him.
ask you that. I was going to
But
ask you that on here if you were one of the guys partaking in that because I feel like the dude
I
played
didn't.
162 games, like is always the guy that's taking the brunt of the load. Nobody wants to say anything to Harper. Nobody wants to say anything to Schwarber, but every other player on the Phillies roster is fair game to blame stuff on, and maybe Zach Wheeler's in that category as well. But Zach Wheeler's also somebody that has has I forget the word that I'm trying to say, but he's somebody that has proven himself to like kind of be above the blame because he doesn't really put the Phillies into scenarios where he has to get blamed. But yeah, Nick Castellanos seems like he always steps up in the biggest moments. And for Bryce to hit that home run with Trey Turner on base, like the pitcher had to pitch that, but the pitcher really didn't have to throw the pitch that he threw to Castellanos, and Castellanos just made him pay immediately.
Yeah, that's the thing is, although I'm not against the booing because it worked, right? I'm just not the person that can really bring myself to boo my own team. I know it's a big thing in Philly. It would have to be something like really egregious. Like if let's say the next Eagles game, every single drive in the entire first half was a 3-and-out, I would boo the shit out of them, right? But I'm not gonna boo Castellanos for two bad swings when for a good chunk of the later part of the season, he was most of our offense. But it did work, and he even talked about it. How after hearing the boos, it frustrated him and it made him lock in more. And the other thing that he didn't even directly say, but I put two and two together, was whatchamacallit. He mentioned, for that last at bat, he said after, two straight swings, he went down 0-2. He took time. He stopped, took a breath. He said, I want to slow things down. If he blows a fastball by me, so be it, but I'm not going to strike out swinging at a slider away. And I think a big part of that is because we booed him, or they booed him when he swung at sliders away. So he's like, okay, I don't want to have to deal with, the backlash if I strike out on a slider away. So let me slow it down a bit. And that totally worked. So I think not only did the booing help with him hitting the home run later, hitting the base hit later, but I think it was a big part of how he ended up hitting that walk-off.
Yeah, I think the biggest crushing swing that really just kind of made me feel down about our chances in the game was that Kyle Schwarber check swing that he ended up striking out on. I thought that was
Yeah.
a huge play in the game, and that ended the inning. And I did not feel confident after that point. I just thought the Mets were gonna try and string something together, and it's just, I mean, yesterday was just one of the craziest games in Phillies playoff history. I mean, we tie the game up, they take the lead, and then we take the lead, and then they tie it back up again with another home run. And I'm just like, what? Like, I can't trust this bullpen at all to get an out for us. Like, and it was
Yeah,
going to come
and
down
that's
to us like trying to figure something out because I would not have felt confident in extra innings. I know there's not the ghost runner in the playoffs, so that would have been a plus, but I would not have felt confident turning that over to our bullpen in extra innings
yeah.
whatsoever.
No, I mean that's the thing. That's why ninth inning, you got runners on. Cassie's at the plate. He's down to two strikes. That I was as nervous as I would have been if we were down a run in that situation, because it basically felt like we were, in the sense that if they don't get a run there and it goes to the top of the 10th inning, at that point I had zero confidence in the bullpen that they would keep it a tie game going into the bottom of the 10th. So it was imperative that they ended it right then and there.
Oh, they had to have. What did you think about the Mets bringing in Edwin Diaz at the point in time that they brought him in? Because I felt like it was a little premature, and I felt like it almost seemed like everybody was assuming that they were trying to get 7 outs out of Edwin Diaz. It's like you can't pitch it, especially with how much that the Mets bullpen has had to pitch over the past week. I thought it was a little crazy for them to trust him in that scenario.
Yeah, I never thought they would try and get him to throw 7 outs. I took the assumption they want him to finish off the 7th, pitch the 8th, and then bring somebody else in for the 9th. My assumption behind their thought process was, instead of bringing out a different reliever now and possibly letting this get out of hand, and then bringing Diaz in for the 9th, let's bring out our best reliever. Let's bring him out now. Make sure we can hold the lead, and then we'll bring in somebody else for the 9th in a less dire situation, in a situation that isn't, a much easier situation. Come into the 9th, you have the lead, base is empty, just get 3 outs, because they probably trusted Edwin Diaz to get out of that situation more than anybody else. And they've probably felt that there were some other guys that they could trust to just get 3 outs in the 9th. For that situation, that called for your best reliever. So I understand the decision there. It was a bit risky of a decision, though, because, if the Phillies do end up tying it or taking the lead, then you don't have your best guy for when you really need him. So it was a bit of a risky move. Thankfully, it didn't pay out because Edwin Diaz ends up giving up runs in the 8th. And then they had somebody else in the 9th. Who was it? McGill, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was McGill.
Yeah, it
Yeah, he
was
was the first one
McGill.
to pitch for them.
Yeah, and he wasn't able to get it done either. So, I feel like Edwin Diaz had been doing well for quite a bit. And I think that punch in the mouth might set him straight again. So
I felt
that's
like
what I'm hoping
they
for.
were obligated to go to him knowing they had the day off too, so they would get a little bit of a rest today for him. And
Yeah.
like you said, that they needed their best pitcher in that moment. But what gave me a lot of confidence is on the broadcast when you're watching the game and then you see Bryson Stott come up and I'm like, oh, Bryson Stott once again, like, he hasn't been batting that well this year, went down to 240. How much confidence can I have in him? But he has stepped up in the playoffs and had big hits in the past. And then I see that he's 2 for 5 with a home run off Edwin Diaz in his career. And I'm like, wait, can something actually happen here? And then he steps up huge. So I feel like Bryson Stott, with the way that Bryce tied the game, and Nick Castellanos, obviously Nick was the number 1 player on the field yesterday, but Bryson Stott, that was so gigantic for the Phillies yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? While we're still talking Phillies and Mets, usually my meatball of the week is a segue into another topic, but my meatball of the week this week is on the same topic. So I'm going to give it now. So it's now time for my meatball of the week. And my meatball of the week is a guy I had never heard of. But the footage from yesterday was very funny. I don't know if you saw it. Some guy over at Barstool by the name Clemmer, assuming that's his last name. I don't know his first name. They just keep referring to him as Clemmer. But I don't know if you saw the footage from the live stream they had going on during the game.
Yeah, I saw that today.
But yeah, when Schwarber was on first, one of the guys said, "I don't even know if I want to pitch to Harper here," and Clemmer goes, "I do. It's a 3-run lead." And the guy's
He's
like,
not
"I don't know,
Shohei
man."
Ohtani. How many times
Yeah,
did he say he's not
the one
Shohei
guy,
Ohtani?
the one guy goes, "Yeah, but Harper's scary." He goes, he's not that scary. He's not Shohei Ohtani. He's not Shohei Ohtani is scary. And then KFC Barstool is like, shut the fuck up, Clemmer. And then on the right after that next pitch, Harper hits a 2-run bomb. Everyone's getting on Clemmer. Absolutely hysterical. But yeah, that's my meatball of the week.
That's
To
funny. WIP
to
actually.
downplay postseason Harper is just nuts. And
Yeah, that doesn't
Harper
make sense. I
showed
mean,
him
yeah, he's
why
not
you can't
Shohei Ohtani.
downplay
He's
him.
actually played in the playoffs in his career and has like all-time playoff stats. So I think Bryce
Him
Harper's
and Schwarber lead the franchise for most postseason home runs, and this is only his third postseason.
Did you see Bryce Harper has the third highest OPS in postseason history?
Yeah, only behind Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. And
Like,
you're gonna go, I don't know if I would. Well, I wouldn't pitch around him. He's not scary. Like what? Since being a Philly, even with his brief postseason time in Washington, I mean he's been one of the greatest postseason performers of all time, and he has made a huge name for himself as a postseason performer the past 2 years.
oh yeah, guaranteed.
And every time people have called him out, he's made them pay. I mean, look at Orlando Arcia last year. He's just like he's just a killer in the postseason in that sense, where it's just the second
I
you
actually get
kind of throw
nervous
shade
about
at.
Bryce Harper, but it's not because of Bryce Harper. I get nervous about Bryce Harper because I'm like, if I'm another team, I'm literally never pitching to this dude. I don't care what it is. Like, you can just
Yeah,
make anybody else try and beat me. Like, even in that scenario with Trey Turner on base, people say, like, oh, Trey's on base. Now you have to pitch to Bryce. Like, no, I don't care. I have a 3-run lead, dude. I'm literally intentionally walking them. And I know Castellanos is hot, and I believe in Castellanos personally. But if I'm an opposing manager, like, I'm going to make Castellanos beat me every single day of the week over Bryce Harper, just sending one into the moon. And like, you don't even know if Castellanos hits that home run if Bryce doesn't hit that home run in front of him, because then the pitcher's rattled. He doesn't really know what to do.
yeah. I can tell you one thing from being at the game yesterday. After Harper hit that first home run, the energy in the ballpark when Castellanos came up, I just felt a second home run coming. And so I think you're definitely kind of right there. I think Harper really set the tone with that home run that kind of led into a Castellanos home run, because I could just feel it from the energy of the crowd, the energy in the ballpark, the sudden shift of momentum. I just felt a Castellanos home run coming up next.
You know what's crazy is the Castellanos home run got ruined for me because I had the Phillies tweets on getting sent to my phone.
Oh, come on.
So
You can't
I
be
saw
doing that.
I didn't get notified about the Bryce Harper home run. I saw that live, and then I'm looking at my phone and I see tie ball game before two pitches before Castellanos
Mm,
even hits the home run,
mm.
and I'm like, oh, like I'm happy right now. Knowing that Castellanos is about to hit a home run, but then again, it just got ruined for me because I had the tweets on.
Yeah.
So for the rest of the game, anytime that they were in a scenario where they could produce runs or anything, I just had my phone face down and just couldn't even look at it. So
Yeah, I mean, you can't have notifications on. Me, I'm the kind of guy, if I'm watching a Phillies or Eagles game, I have the habit of refreshing my Twitter feed to see what people are saying during it. But only like immediately after a play happens.
yeah,
Because if you pause for a moment and then check Twitter, you're going to see spoilers, because other people are ahead of you. There's people at the game that are well ahead of you, obviously. So you can't you got to avoid that. One thing I wanted to bring up from being at the game, but actually there was a couple interesting characters where I was sitting. Okay, because the first character was this guy who was just way too enthusiastic, like just way too over the top. Because when the game started, he's being real enthusiastic. He's yelling, he's screaming, he's getting the crowd hyped up. But then we're down 2-0. The offense is sputtering. And he's like, come on, everyone, come on, make some noise. Why's everybody being so quiet? What the hell is this? And it's like, dude, we're down 2-0. Like fucking relax. And one guy even starts yelling at him, because this was the third inning now, and we had been hearing him the entire game to this point. And now we're losing.
and we're
And
also
nobody
like thinking about it, like it felt like yesterday and game one were combined because of how dry the bats were. The bats were
Yeah.
dry
Yeah.
until like
So it was a
a
lot of
ninth inning
misery.
run that we produced in game one that really didn't matter at anything, pretty much since the first inning of game one. It wasn't like we got guys on base and we had a bunch of traffic and trouble. We had a leadoff home run and then one run scored after that for
Yeah.
what, 15,
Yeah.
16 innings?
At that point, it had been, um, what was that? 11 straight scoreless innings of
Yeah.
baseball by Phillies offense. So yeah, we're all miserable. Oh, what the hell? Why is everybody so quiet? And then another guy starts yelling at him, and then we didn't hear a peep from that guy the rest of the game. He was silent after that. So shout out to the guy that yelled at him because we were all starting to turn on him. But then also, so right in front of me, there was a family of four. Okay. There was a mom, a dad, and their two kids, right? A boy and a girl. Now, the dad and his son were Mets fans. The mom and her daughter were Phillies fans, right? Now, the son was no older than 7, maybe 6, maybe 7, no older than that. And now this is how much of a sicko I am because I'm at the game with my cousin. And I see that kid sitting there with his father. They got their Mets gear on. And I'm like, I know this sounds bad, but I want that kid to suffer. And I think it's like you look at a little
Brutal,
kid
dude.
like in his Mets gear at like a Phillies postseason game, and you're picturing if the Mets win, he's gonna be all happy and cheery, like, yay, daddy, we won. You know what I mean? And it's like I don't want to see that. I don't want to see any of that. I don't want some little kid all happy and excited the Mets won while we're all miserable because we just went down 0-2 in the series. Screw that kid. I hope he suffers. That was my mentality, right? Pretty messed up, but you know what? Postseason baseball, it brings the worst out of some of us, okay? And so, at first things are going well for the Mets. After Harper after Harper hit the home run, the kid, he's like this with like his fingers covering his ears because the stadium is so loud. I don't think you should bring it. First of all, I don't think you should bring a small child to a postseason baseball game. Yeah, and just because for a big reason is because of how loud it gets. You know what I mean? Like you're damaging your kids' ears at that point. Um, and it's just very rowdy. People yelling "fuck this, fuck that." Um,
I think
so
it's definitely
that's
more
one
suited
thing.
for him to attend a game in New York where he's got people on his side
Yeah,
rather than
yeah,
going
and
into the Lions' Den of Philadelphia and trying to
yeah,
come
and I'm
out
not done
unscathed.
there. And I'm not done there. Because then after the Castellanos home run, he's sitting there and he's got his head buried in his arms. And while everyone else is around him cheering, it was an insane sight to see. I actually felt a little bad at that point because he was not having a good time. And then the Mets would answer back. He'd be in a good mood again. And then anytime we would start to gain momentum, I would look over at this kid to see how he's handling it all. Um, After the Phillies took the lead, after the Mets responded, then his mother was holding him because he was having that bad of a time. And even after we won, that kid
Dude,
did
I was
not have a
down,
good
like I
time.
said,
He did suffer.
I was down in Atlantic City for game one, and we take the lead with the Schwarber home run. We're all going ballistic. Like all you see is Phillies fans. There was one dude in the very beginning that had a Mets like jersey T-shirt on, so that dude was there from the jump. But the Phillies Schwarber hits the leadoff home run. Me and all my friends and a bunch of people at the casino gets crazy loud. We're going insane, and then it's dry for a long period of time. The Mets start scoring, bro, out of the woodworks of nowhere. You just see all these Mets fans flocking around the area of us talking all this shit. And I'm like, bro, where were you guys even at? Did you come out of the
Right.
bathroom and just like out of nowhere? And I'm just like, bro, like this is ridiculous. And it was just a bad time. In the eighth inning, after they gave up a couple runs, that like me and my friend were just like, yeah, we can't have this anymore. And we ended up listening to the rest of the game on the radio. So it was just a tough game one, and I thought that spilled over to game two a little bit too until they found their way. But I was
Well,
happy that not only they found their way in game two, via the home run to begin with, but they also caused traffic on the bases after that. They didn't just rely on a couple home runs to win the game, because I feel like that's not sustainable baseball like we talked about before. But I don't know if you've we're going to talk about the Phillies a little bit the rest of the series, but real quickly, have you been watching this Dodgers Padres series at all?
I didn't catch the first game, right? Saturday night I was out at Xfinity watching the Phillies games, and then after that we left. We got cheesesteaks. I went home, just got in bed and watched Bad Blood, the WWE pay-per-view. But after the Phillies game, I was with my cousin. We went back to his house after the game, and we called a good bit of Dodgers Padres, and the Padres really just piled on. That
They
was
hit
a
what, 6 home runs yesterday?
yeah, and then a fan threw a baseball at
Well,
Profar.
that's why when you did the what's the deal segment today, I was actually hoping that you would have talked about the Dodgers fans, because
That would have been a good
My
what's the
cousin,
deal.
my
Actually, I
cousin
didn't even
grew up
think
in
of
San
that.
Diego and is a Padres fan. So I actually have a Bryce Harper and Trey Turner jersey from. We do a bet every time the Padres and the Phillies play each other, a jersey bet. So whoever wins the series gets a jersey from the other. So I have a Trey Turner and a Bryce Harper, and I've never had to buy him a jersey. So that's the good thing. But
Oh,
I was taunting him. I was telling him before the game yesterday that Fernando Tatis is going to strike out 4 times, this, that, the other. I have to place bets for him because he's in a location where he can't place the bet. So I log in and put them on, and he's putting money on the Padres money line every game. And I actually now am rooting for the Padres. I want the Dodgers because I think the Dodgers might actually be an easier matchup for the Phillies. But
I don't think
um,
so.
I don't know. The Padres bats are so hot. Their catcher
Well,
has been
listen, we
poor
we we got to
preseason
worry
from
about
Monday.
getting through this series. Let's not
Oh,
even talk
100%.
about. Yeah.
I'm
Um,
just hoping those two teams beat each other up and just get it to game 5. That's just what I'm
I'm
hoping for
hoping
that.
I'm hoping the Padres win. I hate the Dodgers. I think their fans are actually the worst in baseball. People always, talk about how bad Philly fans are, and they always bring up the snowball and the batteries. Uh, Dodgers fans killed a man. Why does no one ever bring that up? People constantly bring up us throwing snowballs at Santa back in the 60s when it was just a drunk fan in a Santa costume they brought on the field. We all threw snowballs at him. He thought it was funny. Everyone was just goofing around, having a good time, and they bring that up like we're horrible people. Dodgers fans killed a man. And no one ever brings that up. I think it's insane.
Well,
Last night was
the Dodgers fans almost lost in the game yesterday because, I mean, one, they weren't going to win the game because they were already down a gigantic hole. But I don't know if I sent it to you on Instagram or not, but they had to delay the game because Jurickson Profar was getting stuff thrown at
yeah,
him. I'm pretty sure they were
yeah.
throwing stuff at Fernando Tatis. It took 8 minutes for the game to not be delayed anymore. If it would have been delayed for more than 15 minutes, then the home team forfeits the game, and the game goes in the record books as a 9-0 victory, regardless of score for the opposing team.
Yeah. I mean, Dodgers fans are unequivocally the worst, in my opinion. But we get a ton of hate. Well, somebody was even hating on us for chanting "fuck the Mets" after the game. Like that's such a typical thing in sports to do. And then you even have the New York fans chanting "fuck Embiid." That's a whole different sport. And,
Yeah.
and that's fine, but then like when the Phillies fans chant "fuck the Mets," it's like, oh, stay classy, Philly. It's just it's absolutely absurd, like how we do something so minimal, and everyone's like, wow, Philly fans are the worst. And then you'll have Braves fans throwing trash on the field. You'll have Dodgers fans throwing baseballs at Profar, also killing a man. I don't even know if you ever heard about that when Dodgers fans killed a Giants fan outside the stadium after one game. But yeah, no one
No,
ever really
I
talks
think
about
I
that.
heard of that. I thought you were talking about wasn't it at the Dodger Stadium where the dude was trying to catch a home run and he fell onto the concrete that was underneath him? I think it was a California team. I'm pretty sure.
I don't. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I don't remember what team that or game that was, but yeah, no, Dodgers fans. They once killed a Giants fan outside in the parking lot after a game. and that just like never gets brought up. But throwing snowballs, no, we're the worst. It's absolutely awful. I won't keep
Well,
talking
I
about it.
don't
I'm
even like.
stressing
I don't
myself
know the
out.
legitimacy of the Dodgers fans were even at the crowd, because it seems like, I mean, you got two teams in the town. The Dodgers are obviously better, but I feel like a lot of them are just not even like true. They're just trying to find something during the day in California to do, as opposed to like being actual diehard Dodgers fans.
Maybe, who knows? Anyway,
Like I
in
saw I
order to
saw a video I saw a video yesterday. I think it was a reporter talking at the San Francisco 49ers game versus the Cardinals. And I don't know if it was versus just because they were playing the Cardinals or what, but there was a section of, I don't even know how big. There was like probably like at least 10,000 seats open behind the reporter, just in the San Francisco 49ers thing. And they're supposed to be one of the best teams in the league, this, that, the other. And then they end up losing the game. But it's like, where are all the fans at? Like,
yeah, I don't know. LA, it's not like a real sports town. It's not like a diehard sports town. So
it's just
that's
flocking to whatever team's doing the best at the current moment, and just,
yeah. But anyway, in order to segue us into what we expect from the rest of the series, the one thing I want to say, um, is starting with the doubleheader that the Mets played. Looking at what they did that first game, looking at what they did against the Brewers, looking at what they did in game one of the series, looking at what they almost did in game two of the series. The Mets during this run have made a big habit out of coming back late and winning ball games. That's been their whole identity as a team, is coming back late, taking over and winning. And the Phillies gave them a taste of their own medicine yesterday. Which to me, that's making a statement. That's saying, this is how you've been winning games. We can do it too, and we just did it to you. So that gives me so much more confidence throughout the rest of the series than if we were to have just had like a 3-1 victory where we took the lead in the third inning and then we ended up winning 3-1, and it just wasn't much action after that, like just a typical low scoring win. The fact that we beat them at their own game yesterday and prove that we can do it as well, to me, that gives me more confidence going into the rest of the series.
yeah, I'm just a little bit nervous. The one thing I am nervous about is some of the bigger bats in their lineup, like the JD Martinez's and Jesse Winker. They haven't really gotten going yet, so I'm a little bit nervous about that. The top of their order has been doing their thing. I mean, Mark Vientos looks like the absolute Phillies killer right now. I mean, he's been so hot, and he's been hot like that. I mean, they had a highly touted prospect in Brett Beatty that was supposed to be the franchise third baseman, and he just took over the ranks and just ran away with it. And he's just been belting the ball all over the place versus the Phillies. So I think the rest of the series, as cliche as it sounds, is really going to come down to pitching. And as much as I don't feel that confident in the Phillies bullpen, I mean, the Phillies bullpen gave up 3 home runs yesterday, which was just gross. But I think it's really going to come down to pitching. And I don't know if I would go head to head to say the Phillies bullpen is better than the Mets bullpen, but I feel like the Mets are
Right now, our
so
bullpen
reliant.
looks like a dumpster fire.
I just feel like the Mets bullpen is so reliant on Edwin Diaz and him setting the
Yeah.
tone, and then just them getting to a certain point to be able to have a lead to put him in the game, where if it's just going to be a one-horse race, then the Phillies can really get after him. So I think that's why it's going to be interesting to see how Topper sets the lineup for the rest of the series, because playing off the pitching matchups and who he's going to be platooning and which outfielder is going to start. I mean, we talked about the outfield the entire playoffs. Brandon Marsh kind of didn't really get his opportunities yesterday because it just wasn't the right matchups. I mean, Austin Hayes, Cody Clemens, even they're adding even more guys to the platoon. Rojas got subbed out, already having a hit in the game. So it's going to be interesting. But the way that
Yeah,
they
he's definitely doing a lot with the lineup right now.
because I feel like if they're platooning the outfield, you might not see that outfielder for the entire game. But if they're going to platoon Bryson Stott or Alec Boehm, Bryson Stott or Alec Boehm's going to come up to pinch hit at some point in the game. So, and like I said, I don't know if we're going to be batting Alec Boehm in the 8 hole, but it might make sense to put him further down in the lineup, maybe like the 6 hole, because you can't take Castellanos out of the 4 hole now. And that was just the way that the end of the season ran. And people thought like, oh, just based off the injury, like Alec Boehm will feed back into the 4 spot and put Castellanos in the 5 spot. But I mean, you can't take Castellanos out of the 5 spot now. And I feel like he gives that protection that everybody wants to Bryce Harper too, because of how well that he's playing.
Yeah, no, well, you certainly can't take Cassie out of the 4 hole. That's not even a thought that's crossing through Topper's head. Like I mentioned earlier, during a big stretch of the later part of the season, Castellanos was the life of the offense. He has a ton of walk-off hits this season. He's
They
a
have
guy
10
that
walk-off
you
hits. The
need.
Phillies have 10 walk-off wins this year. Castellanos is responsible for 5.
Yeah. And he's the guy you need behind Harper right now. Because even though, like you said, you would still pitch around Harper with Castellanos looming, but that's not how, every pitch is going to think. That's not how every manager is going to think, especially if Castellanos continues to hit well. If you already have Turner on base, you can't exactly say you're going to pitch around Harper, because then you might want to try and pitch around Castellanos as well. It's not like you can load the bases with Turner on third. At some point you got to go after one of the hitters. So I think Castellanos being in the 4 hole is absolutely key to what this offense needs right now. I think, Bohm, wherever you want to put him in the lineup is, wherever you end up putting him. I agree, maybe not having batting 5th. Maybe you put a lefty behind Costi. But the one thing I want to talk about for now, granted, I am nervous for the rest of this series. Because the Mets are still a very hot team. We still have our issues. And now we have to go.
Well, like we said, we would not have felt
Field.
confident if that went into extra innings. We would not have felt confident. So it's like we're
Yeah.
glad that they ended it in the bottom of the 9th. But if there was any more time remaining in that game, I mean, I feel like it's a 50-50 split.
Yeah. So although I am feeling nervous for the rest of the series, another big reason, as I was about to mention, is now you got to play 2 games in Citi Field in a hostile environment. But I can tell you what I like about the series moving forward is you get Nola on the mound tomorrow, right? I think it was a good move to put in Sanchez yesterday, considering how good Sanchez has been at home. And then you get Nola for game 3. Nola in the postseason has been terrific as a Philly thus far. He's had his bad moments in the regular season throughout the years, but in the postseason, he's been excellent. So you get him on the mound tomorrow. If you win that game, then that guarantees you at least get a final game in Citizens Bank Park with Zach Wheeler on the mound. And although Saturday didn't go as planned, I will always feel confident if we're at home with Wheeler on the mound. And you also, it's not like game 4, you have someone who's not very good on the mound. You also have Ranger Suarez for game 4. A guy who has a career postseason ERA so far of 1.88 from what I saw earlier. So, I mean, I really like the pitching, the starting pitching. I will emphasize, I really like the starting pitching throughout the rest of the series. I think what they did in the late innings last night was the explosion they need on offense to really get things going throughout the rest of the series. So I am definitely nervous for the rest of the series, but there are reasons for me to feel a bit confident as well.
The starting pitching has not been an issue at all. I was actually Christopher Sanchez pretty much pitched a Christopher Sanchez start yesterday. It had nothing to do with him. I mean, he gave up those runs, but at the end of the day, that's pretty much what he's been giving you the entire season. It was just our bats were really dry up until a certain point. The only thing that I'm upset about is that if it does come down to a game 5, you have to use Zach Wheeler in that game, and then you're not going to be able to use him to start off the series versus either the Padres or the Dodgers in the championship series. So that's why it's really annoying that they let the Mets off the hook in game 1 and just wasted that Wheeler performance. But it is what it is. I feel good about Aaron Nola on the mound. even if Zach Wheeler had to pitch one of these games at Citi Field, if it came down to it for whatever reason, if they game 4 that they throw him out there. I mean, he used to play for the Mets, so that's always a plus that he wouldn't be intimidated by that ballpark or anything. And I think it was the right move at the end of the day. The thing is, they just have to get Ranger just really has to pitch at least 5 because I'm not nervous specifically about Ranger. I know he can give us some strong innings. That's just turning over to the bullpen that quickly because the issue with Ranger right now is the longevity. And you saw that Christopher was only able to get through 5 yesterday and then gave it over to the bullpen, and the bullpen almost blew the game for us.
Yeah. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens the rest of the series. I have my reasons to be nervous. I have my reasons to be confident. It's like a mixed feeling. The only thing we can do is watch and see what happens. But before we wrap up here, I think it's a good time to talk Eagles a little bit. Facing the Browns next week. The Browns look like an
Which
absolute.
quarterback are they going to be facing is the real question.
Yeah, I mean, everything it looks like an absolute dumpster fire right now. Deshaun Watson. I didn't get a chance to fully see what happened. I haven't really got a chance to catch up on a lot of stuff from yesterday because I was just at the Phillies game, then went back to my cousin's house for a little bit, then went home, went to bed, then got up, came to the office. So I haven't really gotten a chance to catch up on a lot of things. But all I did see was they came out for 4th down on offense, and Deshaun Watson just walked off the field. So it seems
Yeah, the
like
game
there's
was
a
never
lot.
competitive, and that's where we raised the question now with a lack of topics during the bye week for the Eagles. I mean, we obviously know that the injuries should be better. Lane Johnson should come back, A.J. Brown should come back, and Devontae Smith should be back as well. So they'll be back at full strength. But the Washington Commanders just moved to 4-1. And versus a team where even though the Browns are really bad, I mean, their defense is still really good. And Jaden Daniels just wasn't even sweating out there versus the Browns defense yesterday. So is it time to call concern and be worried about the Washington Commanders, or how do you feel about that scenario?
Maybe a little bit. Like I said last week, not every team that starts off hot ends up sustaining it throughout the year. Sometimes teams start off hot and then they sputter. So you could look as well. Now they're 4-1. But the Browns, they're a team that Dallas whooped up on. They've now whooped up on. The Browns are not really like a challenge or anything. So it's not like you would have expected things to start to sputter for the Commanders starting this past Sunday. So, but it was a very convincing win. But it was also a very convincing win for the Cowboys. And although they won last night, they don't look particularly great. It was a good win against the Steelers. They got very lucky at the end with a fumble that just
That was
bounced
one of
right back
that
to the
was one of the
Cowboys.
craziest plays. That was one of the craziest plays I've seen in some time. That was like a picture perfect hit. And honestly, shout out to Dak Prescott for getting on that ball because they lose that game if he doesn't get on the ball.
Yeah, if the ball just bounces the other direction, the Cowboys lose. Dak, although he threw the game-winning touchdown, he also had 2 interceptions that game. They've looked pretty bad against a couple other teams this year. So I mean, it seems like everyone is just beating up on the Browns. So. But that's the thing. If we don't beat up on them this upcoming week, then what does that say about us? It says we're cooked.
We need
So
we really need to establish like our dominance and really figure out what's going on with this team and where they're at right now. That I need the defense to really make something happen because we know we're going to get the playmakers back on offense this week, and the Browns have a tough defense. But if we allow Deshaun Watson, who's on the skin of his teeth, still starting, if he does start on Sunday, and we allow him to cook us, I mean, how confident can we feel about this defense? And then we're scrambling at the trade deadline trying to add pieces to the defense because the Eagles are always going to try and compete regardless of what their record is. So hopefully they install some stuff. I'm hoping during the bye week that guys like Cooper DeJean are getting acclimated and up to speed, and we can see maybe Cooper DeJean get more snaps in the slot. There's certain guys that should just not be out on the field anymore for the Eagles, and one of those guys is Avonte Maddox.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, he looks lost out there. Even Slay, to his credit, I think you got to put either Isaiah Rogers or Cooper DeJean in the nickel at this point. Maddox is just offering you absolutely nothing. He's a liability out there.
I wonder if they're
But
going to try and start figuring out the linebacking situation too, because as much as I have high hopes for Nakobe Dean, I mean he played horrifically versus the Bucks, and if that's on tape and teams can see that they can just pelt you with a quick, short passing game, and the linebackers aren't going to be able to make plays in space, I mean it's going to keep happening to you, and a lot of these teams have the playmakers to make that happen. So. We'll see. I mean, Vic Fangio also has to get better in his scheme and what he's asking of the players, and there has to be an understanding. But it's good that they had the bye week. We were talking about it last week after the loss, that it's good that they had the early bye week because they're banged up right now, and I feel like they're still not on the same page with the coordinators of what exactly they're trying to get out of the players. So hopefully they took this time to get all that shored up and they can put a better performance out. And I feel like getting back to the link too, because they haven't had too many home games this year, will feel good and they'll be able to make something happen.
they've had one home game.
Yeah.
Not they haven't had too many. They've had one.
Well, I mean, it's also what?
We're going into week 6.
Yeah,
and
but
we've
they've only
had
had 4
one home
games
game
too.
so far.
And one was a considered home game, but obviously we knew what was going on with that. But
yeah, no, it wasn't. Bottom line, it wasn't a home game. If it's not the link, it's not a home game. I don't care what it technically is or isn't. It's not a home game. They've had one home game through the first 5 weeks of this season. That is absurd. And then I think even after this game against the Browns, if I'm not mistaken, they're back on the road. Definitely at least once, but maybe even twice. I gotta check here because this is something we talked about when the schedule came out, and I was upset about it, and I still am.
they're at the
they're
Giants,
back on the road.
Giants
They're back on the road twice. So through, as I had mentioned before, after week 8, the Eagles will have had a total of 2 home games. After week 8, that is crazy. That is crazy. But yeah, this is a game they have to win. Absolutely, 1,000%. But not only do they have to win, they have to win at least somewhat convincingly. Now, I know it's not this team's identity to just blow teams out. You know, every win is always an ugly win. But it needs to be at least somewhat convincing. It doesn't have to be a 30-point blowout like what the Cowboys or the Commanders did to them. But you got to win, and you got to at least look a little good doing it. Or else it's a bad sign because this Browns team is an absolute dumpster fire. So
I would feel this way. I would feel this way even if the offensive players were still banged up, that this game should be a win. Even if Devontae
it should be a win. I wouldn't say it needs to be a
win.
convincing win if, they were still without their receivers. But yeah, I mean, you have the bye week. You have a week of preparation. You're getting your weapons back on offense. The Browns are a dumpster fire. This needs to be a convincing win.
Oh, guaranteed. And I would need to see them be more balanced than they've been because they haven't. Game 1, they turned the ball over in the passing game way too often. Jalen also had some more throws that were a little bit sketchy. Then they haven't had AJ, so their passing game has kind of been faltering, and they've really been relying on the run. So I feel like they really need to start establishing the pass, and they need to just show that they're a full team and not just like they can dominate in one department and hope that they can win a game just by being so one-sided, because I feel like they haven't put together a full performance. Either defense is playing really well and the offense is sputtering, or the defense can't stop anybody and they have to score all these points to win the game. So
yeah, well, we'll see next weekend. We'll come back for another podcast next week, and the vibe of the podcast, I mean, it can be like there's so much that can happen. Ways. Yeah, I mean, with the Eagles and with the Phillies, I mean, we're gonna do this podcast next week with either a 3-2 Eagles team and a Phillies team that's still in the postseason heading into the NLCS, or we're doing this podcast with a Phillies team that's knocked out of the playoffs, losing to their bitter rivals, the Mets, and the Eagles losing to an absolute dumpster
I can't even
fire
hear that,
of
dude.
the
I don't even
Cleveland
want to.
Browns
I don't
team.
even want to think down
So
that road.
let's see what the tone is going to be next week's podcast. Join back and find out.
What's the prediction? Who are we going to get for the National League Championship Series? Which two teams will make it through?
I'm not even going to make a prediction. I just want to watch and see what happens. I don't even want to make a prediction.
That's what it is. I think it's going to be right now. Something's telling me that it's going to be the Padres versus the Phillies, but I'm personally hoping that it's the Dodgers because I think the Dodgers present a little bit easier of a matchup. You know, Mookie Betts is 0 for like 22 or 23 or
Yeah, I
24
did see
this
that dating
past
back to last postseason. Yeah,
and he got that
yeah,
home run robbed by him. There's no no wonder why
that
the
was funny. That was
Dodgers fans.
actually
That was so
funny.
funny to
Yeah,
troll the
that
crowd like
was
that.
fun.
Has the home run like that's
Yeah,
iconic. So,
yeah, it was
but
pretty
yeah.
good.
But yeah, we'll be back next week for a podcast. We'll also have some Sixers news mixed in there. They're starting the preseason off. NBA's coming back, so we're really close to the crossover of sports where all the Philadelphia teams are in action. So we'll see. Hopefully, the Phillies make it through. The Eagles start trending in the right direction, and we got Sixers basketball coming up. So until next time, episode 67 of the Paisan Sports podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in.